Hello and welcome to the Work Inspired podcast. I'm your host, George Lucas Pfeiffer, and I've said it before, but on this show, we've been so fortunate to have incredible guests, over 100 episodes, and today's guest is no exception. In fact, if he is an exception, it's only that we've stepped it up to another level. John Huco is the General Secretary and CEO of Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. And, a little secret, we record these intros after the conversation, so we just finished the conversation. And let me tell you, the amount of success, the experience, and the impact that John and his team are having on our planet is groundbreaking. You're going to learn a lot. I'm going to just stop talking. We'll dive right in. Work Inspired starts right now. John, thank you so much for being here on the show. Really excited to talk with you. I've been looking forward to this conversation. An organization like yours, which is world renowned and I think does a lot of good for a lot of people. It's such a pleasure or such a privilege and honor that you've made time for us today to be on our show. Thank you.
Yeah, George, really appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
We like to start off every conversation by asking our guests to kind of tell their professional story. How did they get to where they're at today? How does one become the general secretary and CEO of a company like Rotary?
Well, I've had a sort of eclectic background and probably an atypical route in terms of getting to be the CEO of one of the world's largest nonprofits. But I'm a lawyer by training, and I spent many years as a partner with a actually Chicago-based law firm, Baker and McKenzie. I did my whole legal career in Eastern Europe, moved to Moscow in 1989-90. I was still the Soviet Union to help set up the firm's office there. Then I moved to Ukraine in 1991 and was there for independence, the breakup of the Soviet Union, and then established our firm's office there. And then spent a number of years in the firm's office in Prague before coming back to the States. Our daughter had never lived in the States. We wanted her to have some feeling of being American, and I wanted to also give back to the United States. My parents came to the United States in 1949 from Ukraine as refugees, and the country has just been terrific to us. And I wanted to give back, so I joined the Bush administration as a senior official. We were setting up a new foreign assistance agency called the Millennium Challenge Corporation. It was a government agency designed to deliver U.S. foreign assistance in a new and innovative way. And then, since the position was political, when President Obama won the election in 2008, it was, what do I do next? And so I went to a think tank at Carnegie Endowment in Washington for a bit, do some writing, do some thinking. And then my father, who is a very, he's passed away now, but he was a very active Rotarian, was reading the Rotary magazine. And he saw that they had an article or an advertisement in the magazine that Rotary was looking for a new CEO. And so he rips that out of the magazine and writes across the corner, "Hey, John, I think you got the qualifications for this job," mails it to me. And, I said, "Oh, this is interesting." I threw my hat in the ring, and it's been all uphill since then. But it's interesting because very often when I speak to Rotarians, I say that I take away two lessons from that incident. I say, one, always listen to your dad. And second, really great things happen when you read the Rotary magazine. So I've had sort of several iterations in my career, from a lawyer in a large global international firm, a partner, to a senior government official, to a think tank, working at a think tank. I was also an adjunct professor at Georgetown Law School, and then now finally running a global nonprofit. It's been an interesting run.
Wow, very interesting and incredible, really. I think many of our listeners have heard the name Rotary before, but I'm not sure that everyone 100% knows what Rotary does and what it stands for. So give me a little bit of an overview of the organization as a whole, and then we can talk about some of the priorities or initiatives that Rotary has.
Sure. Well, we're probably one of the world's premier service organizations. We're organized around Rotary clubs. Mm-hmm. Very often, you're driving into cities around the world, you see the Rotary wheels saying the Rotary Club of, Manhattan meeting at such and such a time. We have about 46,000 Rotary clubs around the world. 75% of our Rotarians are now outside the United States, although we were founded in 1905 in Chicago. The first club was in Chicago. And the purpose of the original Rotary Club back in 1905 was really LinkedIn, before anybody had heard of LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Now, to bring business leaders together to network professionally, also have a great time, but really to network professionally. And then about 15 years, 20 years later, they added this service component to Rotary's mission. So really, you join a Rotary Club to do two things: to network professionally, have a really good time with a lot of great people, but also to do good in your community, whether that be local, regional, or global. So we're kind of the intersection between commerce and cause. And each of our clubs has its own personality. Some are very internationally focused, some are very locally focused, some are more designed for the social aspects. That's what they want to do. And again, we have so many different clubs with so many different personalities that if someone's interested in joining Rotary, you can always find a club in your area that kind of meets your desire and your need. As I said, we're 75% of Rotarians are now outside the U.S. We're truly global. And I like to say there's not a politician in the world that probably doesn't have a Rotarian as a constituent. And so that gives us a really unmatched global platform to advocate for issues, to really make a difference in the world.
So are most Rotarians, I think you call them, are they professionals? They're post, they're outside of school, they're a certain age, or are there subsets of the Rotary group that is, younger audience?
Well, we have three categories of clubs within the Rotary family, so to speak. We have what are called Interact clubs, and these are high school-based clubs between 12 and 18-year-olds. And usually a Rotary club will sponsor an Interact club at the local high school. And it's really designed to give the kids an opportunity to get together and to do community service projects and to work together with Rotary clubs to really make a difference in their community. And then the second level is we have called Rotaract clubs, and they're from sort of 18 to 30-ish. And some clubs, Rotaract clubs, are university-based, some are community-based. And again, these are people getting together, both for the social aspect of it, but largely to do community service projects and to make a difference. And then we have the third category, which is Rotary clubs. There's no sort of minimum or maximum age for Rotary clubs, but they tend to attract people who are already settled down in their professions and working. But it spans the gamut from Fortune 500 senior leaders to someone who has, a school teacher or, a local business owner. I mean, it really spans the gamut, and that's the beauty of Rotary. It really does embark society writ large in a common quest, again, to really make a difference in the world.
So when you talk about that volume of clubs internationally, how many people are we talking about? How many people are involved with Rotary? And then how many people are kind of employed or kind of central to the Rotary organization?
Yeah, we have about 1.4 million Rotary members.
Wow.
1.2 million Rotarians and about 200,000 Rotaractors, that middle level of club that I talked about. We have another 300, 400,000 interactors. Those are those high school-based clubs. So it's a pretty large organization. And I think there's very few countries where we're really not present. I think we're in like 200 countries and geographic locations. And so, that's kind of the scope and breadth. As the General Secretary and CEO, I oversee the Rotary Secretariat, which is the Rotary professional staff. And our headquarters are in Evanston, Illinois, which is just north of Chicago. I have a staff of about 800, around 575, 600 are here in Evanston. And then we have 7 offices around the world where the remaining colleagues in the Secretariat are. So my job is really to manage the day-to-day operations, provide the continuity in Rotary, because our governance structure is relatively complex. We have a Rotarian who serves as the president of Rotary for 1 year. So every year, the president of Rotary is changing. Every year, half of our board of directors, our international board of directors, changes. So it's again, one of the value propositions of Rotary is that it does give you real leadership opportunities at both club presidents and then the further work your way up the Rotary structure. And that's been of great value to many people who join Rotary. Is you become a good speaker, you become a good leader, in addition to being able to make a difference in the world.
So you talked about all these different locations that Rotary is kind of present in, and I'm sure that there's some local and community-based impact that the Rotarians have in those locations. Is there a central kind of goal of Rotary Group, though, from an international basis that everybody kind of works in some way to try to achieve?
Well, because we have this enormous platform, we're
Hmm.
really in a position to undertake huge, large, impactful projects. And so our
Hmm.
signature corporate initiative is the eradication of polio.
Mm.
Back in 1985, Rotary, which was really a nonprofit, right? We're not a government agency or a multilateral institution, Ministry of Health. We're, normal people who got together and want to make a difference, had the audacity. I think that's the right word, the audacity to say, we're going to eradicate a disease from the face of the earth. And smallpox had been recently eradicated. And so we said, hey, let's see if we can do the same with polio.
Mm.
But we realized we couldn't do it alone, right? Partnership is key. And so in 1988, we partnered with the World Health Organization, CDC in Atlanta, and UNICEF to create the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. And more recently, the Gates Foundation has joined the effort, as has Gavi, the Global Vaccine Alliance. 350,000 cases of polio a year back in 85 in 125 countries. And we're now down to just two countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, where the wild polio virus is still circulating. We've had this year 2 cases in Afghanistan and 2 in Pakistan.
Wow.
It's been an incredible, one of the most successful public-private partnerships in the history of global health. Rotary's contribution is, we do 3 things fundamentally. We're the boots on the ground. Since we're everywhere, we've had hundreds of thousands of Rotarians around the world going around vaccinating children, because the polio vaccine is an oral vaccine. You put 2 drops in a child's mouth. There's also an injectable form, but you need to be a health worker to do that. So we've used the oral vaccine very effectively, because anybody can be a vaccinator. It's much cheaper. And so you just put 2 drops in a child's mouth. And it's a very moving experience when you do that. I was at my first immunization day in India, in a slum in Mumbai, and the mothers are bringing their children in to be vaccinated, and I'm putting these 2 drops in their mouths. And then I look out the window and I see 4 kids crawling across the street with polio. And at
Mm.
that moment, I realized, wow, these 2 drops that I have been giving each of these children will ensure that they will never have to suffer what those children were
Mm.
suffering outside. And so you had hundreds of thousands of Rotarians experiencing the same thing I did. And it just built up this passion to eradicate this disease. So we're the boots on the ground. We also advocate with governments because we're everywhere and have political influence in terms of advocacy. Governments, we advocate with them to both fund the effort and to work on the effort. And finally, we fundraise ourselves. We've contributed about $2.7 billion
Wow.
to the polio eradication effort. That's George, that's a lot of walkathons and pancake
Hmm.
days and bike rides over the last 30 some years to help eradicate this disease. So that's our global initiative. But then, of course, there's clubs get together to do regional projects. They do local projects, spans the gamut: maternal child health, disease prevention, treatment. We raise about 450 million a year
Wow.
in our foundation centrally, and then we re-grant that back out to clubs, Rotary clubs, to do projects. In addition, we give 150 million to polio. So it's
Hmm.
a sprawling big operation.
Well, I guess the first thing I want to say is thank you. I mean, thank you for that work. It's got to be so rewarding to see the impact you're having on people's lives and that your organization has on lives. I mean, you've had a remarkable career, but I'm sure it's not much tops what you just described when you see the tangible impact you're making on these communities through something like those polio drops. That's incredible. You mentioned biking. I've heard that you are an avid cyclist. I got into cycling during the pandemic when my knee gave out. I was a runner before that, but I have since taken up and love cycling. Tell me how you're kind of using that personal passion of yours to help contribute to some of these very large scale initiatives.
Well, as you are, George, I'm a former runner until the hip arthritis and all that started kicking in. So I switched over to cycling about 20 years ago. I'm a very avid cyclist. And so there is a ride in Tucson the weekend before Thanksgiving. It's called El Tour de Tucson. It's a 103-mile ride. It used to be around the perimeter of Tucson, and now they've changed the route a bit to save on costs. And so the local Rotarians in Tucson were using the ride as a fundraising vehicle. There's, I don't know, 8,000-9,000 riders that participate, and they're raising money for polio, and they're raising, I don't know, 9,000-10,000, which is a nice sum. And I ran into a group of them on a water taxi in Bangkok in 2012. Rotary has an annual convention somewhere around the world every year. And we rotate. This year it's in Singapore, the next year it's in Calgary, and then Taiwan. And we get anywhere from 15
Wow.
to 40,000 Rotarians at these conventions. So I'm at our convention in Bangkok in 2012, and I run into these guys on a water taxi. They say, John, you're into biking. I go, yeah. And he goes, can you come out to Tucson and give us a hand on this ride? And I said, sure, love it. And so I joined, and then I kicked into gear the whole mechanism I have for fundraising available through the Secretariat. And so that first year we raised, I don't know, like 250,000. And then the next year we raised 3 million. And the next year we raised 6 million. And so we've raised about over $60 million for polio eradication through that effort. Now, it does include a 2-to-1 match we get with the Gates Foundation for that. But still, that ride has triggered about 60 million worth of fundraising for polio. So it went kind of ballistic. I didn't in my wildest dreams thought that would happen. But, so yeah, it's been great to be able to use my passion for biking. And on a personal level, my goal was to try to crack 5 hours for that ride. And I did about 6 years ago, crack 5 hours. It's probably the first and last time I'll do it, but
congratulations.
Arians are like, well, John, if you crack 5 hours, I'll double or triple my contribution. So there's a lot of incentive there to do that. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a nice intersection between biking and really making a difference.
That's awesome. And a great story about how you can take a personal passion and you can apply it when the cause is right. You can apply it and you can make positive change with it. So that's great. Any bike rides in the Chicagoland area that you participate in?
Yeah, there's something called the North Shore Century that I've done, but it's been more. And I've got a great biking group of guys my age. We're strong riders, but most of us are still working, and we got to be at work on Monday. So it's not, crazy aggressive, but it's a good, quick pace. And the North Shore of Chicago, surprisingly, is a great biking destination. I mean, it's some really good stuff. From my house here in Evanston, I live in sort of in an urban setting, to the Wisconsin border and back is 72 miles. Where else can you get a nice 72-mile ride from your house and live in a urban townhouse? So, yeah, it's been a passion of mine. I really enjoy doing it.
I love it. Well, I'm a little later into it than you are, but yeah, I can't wait to get out now that it's turning. The weather's turning nicer. It's time for some outdoor riding. So.
That's the downside of Chicago. The season is very, very short. So I'm really jealous of those folks who are in the more temperate climates. It makes a difference.
So you've had some just really incredible experience with your career on multiple different levels. And we have a lot of leaders that listen to this show because we've had such great leaders agree to be guests on the show. What's some advice that you can give to other leaders or aspiring leaders that you've honed over all these years of a great experience that you've got?
Well, I think George's a number of factors. One, I think I certainly tried out, again, this is how ideally you want to operate, right? And all of us are humans, and we don't obviously do it to perfection. But I think first and foremost for me, leadership is really about behavior. It's not about the title or it's about the position. And so I think the best way to influence and to motivate people is to really lead by example. And it's also a function of the kind of people you surround yourself with. I'm a huge believer in trying to surround myself with colleagues who are better than I am. I think one of the big mistakes that people make in leadership is they think it's really all about them. And it really isn't. It's about the people you surround yourself with. And I'm relatively talented and I don't make that many mistakes. But if I surround myself with people who are even better than I am, that ensures that there's, even more success. And at the end of the day, as the leader, you ultimately do bear the responsibility, but also bear the accolades, or for whatever it's worth, when things get accomplished. And so if you can get past the ego, if you get past the idea this is really about me, and it's not about me, but it's about the people I surround myself with, that is really fundamental, in my view. And the other issue is, to be flexible. You need to be willing to adapt. You need to be willing to change. Because, we saw in COVID, right? All of a sudden, boom, in the Rotary world, for example, we're based on clubs and people getting together physically to meet as clubs. Well, all of a sudden, March of 2020, that was no longer feasible. And so we had to very quickly adapt to the new reality. And very often, some of these painful kind of new things turn out to be really blessings in disguise. As horrible as COVID was for the world, it was actually quite good for Rotary in the sense that we'd been working very hard to get our Rotarians to embrace technology, and it wasn't that easy. And then all of a sudden, March of 2020, boom, we had no choice. People had to moved to like this tool, Zoom and others. And we
Hmm.
realized, oh my God, this opens a lot of new possibilities to us. So I think it's a function of, surrounding yourself with great people, making it about the your behavior and not about the position, about being flexible, willing to embrace change as needed, and then always realizing that as a leader, you're going to have to grow constantly. It's a growth proposition. You're constantly learning. You need to adapt. You kind of need to change. So that's my
It's great.
my elevator pitch on on leadership.
It's great advice. And I imagine too, I mean, your experience in government and in the legal industry and with a quick think tank, I don't think I imagine you're not a stranger to adversity and to change and challenge. But with an organization the size of Rotary and with goals as ambitious and the progress that you've made, what are some of the challenges that you face as a leader at an organization like Rotary? Like, what are some of the things that you're still trying to solve?
Right. I mean, one of the challenges, if I'm just to be open, is we're based on the concept of the Rotary Club, and
Hmm.
it's been a highly, highly successful model for 100 and whatever 20 years since 1905. And if you kind of went around the world and saw the various Rotary clubs through the century, it was a product. It was a unified, consistent product largely around the world. And what we're finding now is that the traditional product is perhaps not as attractive as it was in certain markets as it was historically. So we're seeing, for example, in Asia, huge growth, huge
Hmm.
growth. Africa, huge growth. Parts of Central and Eastern Europe, huge growth. That traditional model is really one that people want to buy in effect, right? We're finding in other markets, the United States being one of them, UK, Australia, New Zealand, where the traditional model is perhaps not as attractive as it used to be. So what we are doing now, and we've embarked on pretty aggressively over the last 7, 8 years, is really to begin to create a menu of club options.
Mm.
Clubs that organize their own causes, clubs that don't meet as frequently, clubs that are meeting only online, clubs that are focused on as I said, specific issues to really provide a broader range of products, so to speak, that our potential members will find attractive. And we're finding that it's working. We're finding that these new style clubs are really catching on,
Mm.
and hopefully will help us begin to turn the tide and begin to grow our membership in those areas where we've been seeing a decline. So we've had to adapt. We've had to adapt to the times. And it's not easy because when you have an organization as old as Rotary and as successful as Rotary, tradition plays a huge role, and I get it.
Hmm.
And that's been kind of the challenge that we faced, is how to break through some of those traditions. And it's working. And it's working. We're getting there.
And you talk about innovating on a product or service level offering. Is another part of it just getting attention? Like there's a lot of other organizations, a lot of clubs, a lot of not for profits. There's a lot of content and people vying for everyone's attention and time. Is part of it kind of a marketing and PR awareness component?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, George. I mean, right now, you can go online and there's literally thousands of options for you
Hmm.
to spend your time to make a difference in the world. And that's new, right? And it's easily accessible. You just click a button, hit a Google or a DuckDuckGo search, and you're good to go. And so, yes, I think not just Rotary. I think all the service organizations, most nonprofits, are obviously playing in that same sandbox and are facing
Hmm.
those same challenges. So it gets down to what is the value proposition, and why is what Rotary offering more attractive to someone than what another organization is. And that's a function, again, of catering and modifying your product to meet the marketplace, because the market's not going to change for us. We need to change for the market. And I think that's true for almost any industry, right?
Hmm.
And it's not about branding and marketing even so much, because if Apple comes out with an iPad, they can market the daylights out of it. But if the thing isn't what the consumer wants to buy, then they're not going to buy it.
Right.
It's really a function of what's the marketplace looking for? Who are we trying to attract? Now, we do have a huge potential, in my view, with let's say the recently retired,
Mm-hmm.
because they have a lot of time, energy, expertise, and money, and want to make a difference. My generation, the baby boomers, people, it's a fairly well-off retiring generation, and there is wants to give back and make a difference. And I think we found that that segment of society is very attuned to what Rotary has to offer. Similarly, for the younger people, I think what we offer is great networking opportunities, because in a lot of the Rotary clubs, you've really got the leaders, business leaders, and other leaders in the community. And so you join a club as a younger person, sort of at the earlier stage of your career, you've got some really great mentorship opportunities from your fellow Rotarians in your club and in your area. And then finally, I think, George, what we do offer is just access to this extraordinary global network, right? I mean, we've got over what we call fellowships, 100 global fellowships, the beer drinking fellowships, the RV fellowship, the tennis fellowship. We have 25 of these Rotary action groups that focus on dementia or malaria, child trafficking. And you're part of this incredible global network. So you can really leverage your experience, but do it in a global context in a fairly easy way, using the Rotary, structure.
I think back to the incredible, story about polio eradication. And I don't mean in any way to downplay the work that's left, but based off the numbers, it feels like you're at the 98 or 99 yard line, or in cycling terms, you're in the final stage of eradicating polio. So given transformation and the idea of reinventing, first of all, is polio something like smallpox where it can be fully eradicated, and there will be a day, hopefully soon, where you say, we did it, let's celebrate? Is that on the horizon, or is it going to be an ongoing effort for eternity?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, George. I know Harvard Business Review asked me to do a piece a while ago. How is it that Rotary, this diffuse global platform, 1.4 million members, how have you been able to stay the course over 30 plus years, right? And I said there were three factors in polio eradication that made this thing work. The first was that back in 1985, it was a disease that was in 125 countries, and every Rotarian kind of knew about it. It wasn't some far off exotic disease. It was like, just about everybody knew somebody who'd been in iron lung or had suffered through it, and they themselves may have, seen friends and family and colleagues, have it. Second, because of the oral vaccine, anybody could be a vaccinator. And so you had all these Rotarians that got that emotional connection, as I did when I was talking earlier about that scene in Mumbai, that it became not just a check writing exercise, but it was, and so you could participate in it beyond check writing. And third, to your point, you can clearly measure success. We either eradicate it or we don't. It is an eradicatable disease, and that's the beauty here. There's a clear end game. We eradicate it. It's scientifically measurable, and that's what we're really shooting for. And if you think about it, we will then be leaving a legacy for as long as mankind inhabits the earth, right? As long as we're on the planet, no child will have to suffer from polio, just like no one has to suffer from smallpox. That's why I think some of this vaccine hesitancy stuff that you're seeing developing is a little worrying, because we have phenomenal vaccines, not just for polio, but for other diseases. And it's like a miracle. And one really hopes that, the world, continues to use them, because the benefits are, in case of polio, would be, I guess, eternal.
Yeah. Well, and that leads me to my second question is, when you cross that finish line of eradication, do you shift another priority of Rotary that you're currently working on into that top spot? Or do you look for a new opportunity? I mean, you guys have just made such an impact over a number of years, clearly, but what an amazing story. I could see there be value in attracting new volunteers and new passion to the organization to say, now we're tackling this big problem.
Right. Well, the beauty of Rotary is it's not just polio. At the local and regional level, I mean, you name it. We hired Hopkins to help us quantify what we do globally. We know centrally we raised around 450 million, but what we didn't know in a statistically valid way was, what's the value of all the money that our clubs raise locally and spend locally? What's the value of all the projects they do, the in-kind contributions, et cetera? It's maternal child health, it's literacy, it's disease prevention treatment projects all over the world that our clubs are doing. And we also run one of the largest youth exchange programs in the world. 9,000 students we send a year. But it's not just to the States or whatever. It's really Japan to Brazil. It's Zimbabwe to Slovakia. I mean, it's quite incredible, the number of students' lives we've impacted. It's for a year of high school study in a different country. And so it's a lot. Now, the challenge is that if we eradicate polio, to your question, what's next? And you got 1.4 million Rotary members, you're going to get 1.6 million points of view.
Yeah.
Because we do
Yeah.
so much, and there's so much passion in the Rotary world around so many issues, that our challenge is going to be to come up with something. And I think we need a global program personally. I think it put us on the map, put us at the table with organizations like I mentioned, UNICEF, WHO, Gates, Gavi. So I personally feel we need one, and we're now beginning the process of, of how do we figure out what that next global project is. But we may wind up just doing signature projects per region, or signature projects in certain areas. Like we'll do a signature water, a signature disease one, a signature literacy one. That's something we need to sort out, and it's going to be cat herding par excellence to try to get to that answer.
Well, congratulations on being in a place where you can start thinking that way, right? That's a byproduct of the success you've had with your current global initiative. So well done. I think the answer to this is different for each, depending on who you are or where you live, maybe. But from your perspective, what is the value of volunteerism? We know it's important, and those who have done it, can feel the impact, and the stories, like you said in Mumbai, that, that's true value right there. You're saving a life. But I just in a general sense, why is volunteerism important? And maybe lead that into the call to action as to how you can get involved if someone's interested in learning more about Rotary.
Well, again, there's a number of, George, number of levels on it. One is that, government can't take care of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And volunteerism, civil society, in not only throughout the world, can play an incredibly important role in filling the gaps where government can't. Whether it's social services, whether it's making a difference, whether it's providing food or shelter or whatever, the volunteering and giving back, fills a need that very often society can't fill through government. Second, you are making a huge difference. You're making a difference in people's lives. But third, and I think people don't really focus on this, it's good for you. Mm-hmm. I mean, social scientists and medical, they've demonstrated empirically that giving back, being socially engaged, making a difference is good for your health. It's good for your mental health, and at a whole number of levels. And so it's about helping others. It's about making a difference. But also, people very often don't think about this, it's about doing some good for yourself too. And so I think everybody, just as you should be going and working out at the gym and eating healthy, should volunteer as part of an overall, health program. And so you get a twofer for that. So I think, in certain societies, the United States, for example, volunteerism is a huge concept. And if you look at what our volunteer organizations contribute, not only within the United States but abroad, it's quite remarkable, and you see that in many, many countries around the world.
Yeah, you have to pay your taxes, but you choose to give your time and to donate and to be charitable, right? And so I think the difference of those two things, being forced to do something and having the choice to do it, I think that therein lies some of the mental and psychological and personal benefit to giving back, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the check writing. It's the rolling up your sleeves and getting engaged and getting involved. I think that's where you really start seeing that kind of personal health benefits, certainly.
If someone wants to learn more or to get involved with a Rotary Club or one of the other offshoots of the Rotary Group, how do they do that? Do they go to the website? Do they find their local group and reach out? What's the best way to take the next step?
Well, several steps. One, there's our website on Rotary.org. There's a club finder, and you can locate the clubs in your area, and you can contact those clubs directly and visit, see if you like it. We also have a place on the website where you can indicate, hey, I'm interested in joining, learning more about Rotary. I live in Evanston, Illinois, and then we will then have someone get back to you from that region, or from that area, or from that town, and say, hey, George, I saw you, you send in a thing. Listen, we got 4 clubs here. Here's what's going on. So I think those will really be the two ways: Rotary.org, or reach out directly to your local Rotary clubs and take it from there.
And if you're a business leader, are there ways to also involve your organization or a team on within your organization with Rotary?
Yes, we do have the ability to have a corporate membership, so a company can join Rotary and say, listen, I'd like to have 3 of my employees be members of the club. You can rotate what that is. In the UK, we're piloting an experiment where we will identify a company and then go to the company and say, listen, you want service opportunities for your employees. So let's sign up 700 of your employees for this program. We will find service opportunities for your employees with our various Rotary clubs in the area. And we'll take care of all that for you. And because it's part of your CSR program or your employee engagement, we'll give you a hand. You don't have to go searching for these things. And then in return, your employees can build their volunteer CV, which is becoming a big thing now, where people want to sort of build a volunteer curriculum vitae. And so, yes, there are certainly opportunities for companies to get engaged in terms of corporate memberships.
Cool. Well, John, I can't thank you enough. I mean, what an inspiring story. Congratulations on all your success. And thank you sincerely for everything you and your team are doing for our community and for our world. Hopefully I'll see you someday on the road on a bike. But for now, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Great, George. Thank you so much for having me, and all the best to all your members.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate our show. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Work Inspired podcast so that you don't miss any of the incredible guests we have planned for upcoming episodes. We'll continue to find the best and brightest minds in business so that you can learn, grow, and succeed, and so that we can all work inspired. Work Inspired is brought to you by BOS, a leader in commercial working environments and a Hayworth best-in-class dealership. Experience our 360 approach and discover the team, tools, and techniques required to navigate the complexity of your next workspace at BOS.com. If you have ideas, feedback, or would like to be featured on our show, please email podcast@BOS.com. Thank you for listening. This has been a Workspace Digital production. If you're interested in launching a podcast at your organization, please email info@workspace.digital for a free consultation.